Hello and welcome back to another episode of Real Estate Renovators, the business advisory show for real estate professionals. My name's Chanell and this is Rex.
What's happening, Chanell?
What is not happening at the moment, Rexy? I feel like life is a million miles an hour, but all good things. What about you?
Balance. I'm trying to implement balance into my life at the moment. A bit more balance into my life with my training, being a dad, work, and that's why I thought our next guest is going to be perfect for this. Because our next guest has got, from what I've seen on the social media and speaking to him as well, he's got a great balance where he is up super early most mornings. He has ice baths while I'm still in bed most mornings. Trains at lunchtimes, yet is one of the most successful real estate agents under 35 in the whole of Victoria, as well as in the top 5% of Australia as well. So I'd love to learn more from our next guest on how to implement more balance into my life.
Love it, Rexy.
Would you like to introduce?
I would love to introduce. Welcome, Mr. Simon Pintado. How are you, Simon?
Thank you. Brilliant. Amazing.
You're
Looking forward to this. Let's go.
You're looking so fresh. I mean, you've got a newborn at home as
Yes.
well.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. How are you finding the balance to being a dad?
Oh, yeah. It's certainly thrown a spanner in the works, for sure. Balancing the sleep part of it is the most important thing. It's the one thing that you can't control when the baby wakes up, but you can control a number of other things in your life to regulate your balance and your energy. And like you said, Rex, that's one of the things that I'm trying to dial in now with a 6-week-old at home.
And I really want to hone in on this, Simon, but before we talk about your journey with balance, I want to start with where it all began for you in real estate. Tell us a little about you and your career and journey in the real estate industry.
It started on my 20th birthday. I went to university straight out of high school and hated it.
Study?
Occupational therapy.
Ah.
Yep. With the thought process to get into physio at some point. And I hated it from the minute that I went there. Maybe it was a factor of university wasn't for me, but I was also at Monash in Frankston and commuting back and forth. It didn't sit well with me. I spent most of my time arguing or negotiating with the lecturers. Now in hindsight.
Set you up for success.
Yeah, exactly. So I got out of that and I took 6 months off. You know, I was 19, 20 years old, just doing what 19, 20-year-olds do. And then I thought, I might try real estate, just get into it. So I managed to get a job at Buxton in Carnegie at the time, and I started on my 20th birthday. My introduction to real estate was, welcome, here's a phone, here's ownership data, go find some listings, basically. So my first 3 months, and it was only a 3-month stint because I got fired on the last day of my 3-month trial period, was just hitting the phones, cold calling, trying to find listings. And as most people know...
Did they give you a script?
No.
Old school.
Old school.
Here you go.
Old school. Yeah. So I put a lot of people on my database, you know, purely just from cold calling around other agents' listings, but, you know, didn't get any listings because they're not easy to get. On the last day of my 3-month trial period, they basically just said, look, we don't think this is for you. So, you know, all the best. Good luck.
15 years ago or so?
Yeah.
Wow.
So...
Big mistake.
Yeah. So then my girlfriend at the time, it was her dad's 50th, and I met this guy and me and him just hit it off. But I'll rewind a little bit. My first ever day on my 20th birthday, we do our sales meetings we used to be at Milano's in Brighton. And I know this sounds a little bit bad, and I've said this story before, but as a young person going into real estate, we were just talking about it earlier, there's a perception of what it entails. Nice suits, nice cars, high-end lifestyle. It wasn't that at Carnegie for me. My 2 bosses at the time, again, this sounds superficial, but one of them was driving a 20-year-old Holden Astra, the other one was driving a 30-year-old Beamer. So we drive to this sales meeting, and who pulls in front of us? Chris Hassel, who's my business partner, in an ML 420, and he would have been 26 at the time. And I'm just sitting in the car, and I'm like, who's that dude? That's the dude that I want to be like.
Yeah.
Not sitting in a 20-year-old Holden Astra. So anyway, he did his auction that day and it was all impressive and whatever. And then we went to the Bentleigh office afterwards, funnily enough, and Haas had listed 3 that morning. My office had 3 listings.
The whole office.
The whole office. So I'm thinking, what am I doing here? Yeah. You know, this is not where I want to be. Fast forward to that 50th birthday, it was Chris's best mate who I was hitting it off with, and I'd just recently been fired. And he said, my mate's looking for a PA. And I'm like, who is it? He said, Chris. I'm like, mate, that's the guy. That's the dude that I want to be working for. So I did an interview and then, the rest is history. Wow. Worked under Chris for about 3 years and then moved into sales.
And now you're a partner
Yes.
with him.
Yes. Second biggest shareholder at the Bentleigh office.
And what did you learn in those 3 years that were formative enough for you to then become the director and a partner in that business? What were you not getting from Carnegie that you really took from your experience working under Chris?
Having the right person to emulate is really important, particularly in this industry. If you don't look up and look forward to somebody, I think that you're going to struggle a little bit. There's so much on social media these days, and it's always the highlight reel. And you see people come into the industry, do really well after a year or two, but then they leave. And that wasn't the trajectory that I was after. I wanted something that was going to be long-term, sustainable, and that was going to be a career for me forever. So Chris had already built that, after 10 years in the industry, and he was still young at the time. So for me, it was like, I could be this guy in 10 years' time.
It's interesting, Simon. I hear this saying a lot. It's such a cliche. You are the product of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. But when you really think about it, the people you spend the most time with are the people that you work with.
Absolutely.
So if you're not around high performers, how are you expected to be a high performer? What was it about Chris? Like, what were was his day-to-day tasks and responsibilities as opposed to the directors at Carnegie that taught you how to be the best agent that you could possibly be?
It wasn't just about being an agent. It was what we're going to talk about a lot today. It was getting every facet of my life in order. It's funny, you look at my first profile photo on real estate, I was fat, my sideburns, my tie's undone.
I can't imagine you fat at all.
I was a fat kid growing up.
You've seen a lot of ring pics on the gram, so I can't imagine a fat version of
I
you.
deleted all the fat ones. He taught me balance, and a lot of that comes from what you do outside of your 8 till 6 at work. And a lot of that's what you're doing with your personal life, what are you doing on your weekends and your free time. And for me, part of that was, sleep, diet, training, becoming a corporate athlete, so to speak. And not just real estate, but who do I want to be in 5 years' time? If I look forward to that person, what am I doing today that's going to move me in that direction? So it's still a philosophy that I live by now.
This corporate athlete, what does that look and feel like? Because real estate, or even more than most other jobs, is so demanding.
Yep.
Late night, in living rooms, getting listings, weekends working. How do you balance being a corporate athlete?
I find a lot of people can't distinguish between motivation and discipline. That's the big thing. Motivation will ebb and flow, but discipline is something that you can do by choice, and it's something that you do even when you don't want to do. And distinguishing between those two things for me was really important, because motivation will wane, but if you just do the things that you don't want to do all the time, all of a sudden everything becomes a little bit easier. So for me, one of my mottos in life is just don't negotiate with myself. And now more than ever with a 6-week-old, it's even harder with the lack of sleep and whatnot. And it's very easy to revert back to, I can't be bothered today, I didn't sleep enough, or I'm really busy, I'm not going to go to the gym, or I don't want to get into the ice bath. And for me, it's just
Non-negotiable.
conquering the inner little bitch and just saying, just do it, man. Just do it, because you'll feel better for it after. And you always do. You always do. So the corporate athlete for me is, if this doesn't match this, then my output's not going to be what I want it to be. And I see it all the time in our industry where you get really high performers, but they start to get overweight, they start to get unmotivated, they look tired all the time, they go through divorces, breakups.
Yeah.
And it's just not the lifestyle that I wanted to live.
Awesome. And then how do you implement that though? So it's one to have the motivation or discipline, but then implementing to a day-to-day, which is not set in stone.
No. If
a vendor needs to see you, you're probably going to make the time to go
course.
see you. So how do you plan ahead for it?
And balance is the number one reason agents leave the industry. They'll reach a peak and they'll leave because there's no balance in their lives. Every other aspect of their life is neglected. Their mental health, their physical health, their relationships.
Yeah.
But you've seemed to just made it all intertwine into one.
The last 2 years, post-COVID, I really changed a lot of it. COVID shone a light on sort of negative aspects in my life, as I'm sure it did for a lot of other people.
Yeah.
And for me, it was the catalyst to just go, hold on. If I just minimize everything in my life to the non-negotiables and cut out all the bullshit, then I can do all the things that I want to do. So I set up my week in advance. Like on a Sunday, I'll set everything up. Gym's non-negotiable in my diary, no morning appointments, and I schedule in ice baths and recovery and all that stuff. So it's already set in. Hannah, who you sourced for me, knows my diary. She gets access to it, and she knows no morning appointments. Between 12 and 2, I'm out of the office. afternoon you can fill me up till 9 o'clock. I don't mind. So it's about planning. If you plan forward, then I'm not going to get out negotiated by someone putting something in my diary, or, you know, obviously we make do. If a vendor needs to see me and they need to see me, well, we make it happen. But for me, it's non-negotiable. 7 days a week, everything's planned.
Do you think a portion of it as well, Simon? I think a lot of particularly young agents that enter the industry, they think you need to do 12-hour days to be successful, but really it's about the productivity that you have within the hours that you have set. So you know you've got, 2 o'clock you've got a gym session. Between the hours of 12 and 1:45, you know you need to get that task done to head to the next task. Do you think it's a matter of really being productive in those hours as opposed to just working 12 hours a day because you can?
It's a different message for where you're at in your career, I think. When I started, there was no midday gym sessions and nowhere near as much flexibility in my time, for sure, because you're building your business and you're also working for somebody else. So working out your diary outside of the times when you need to be at work is one of those things. But balance comes as you progress through your career when you realise what's important to you. There's no point working 12 hours a day if 6 hours of those 12 hours aren't productive for me. So I notoriously spend the least amount of time in our office. The least. I'm there probably 3-4 hours a day at most. But when I'm there, I'm doing 12 hours worth of work in that time. My door's shut and I'm relentless. And then the second I leave, it's like boom, gym, and then appointments after that. So while you're at work, and this is really important to me, one of the CEOs of Buxton, Mark Earl, he's a great guy, and he gave me a tool when I was 2 or 3 years in. He said, a lot of people pretend like they're busy and they think that they're busy, and then 12 hours of the day passes, and if you really look back at what they've done, they haven't really done much. So he gave me a task. He's like, I want you, every 15 minutes, I want you to write down what you've done for that day. Whether it's going to the toilet, whether it's getting a coffee, whether it's having a chat at the water cooler, whatever it is, I want you to log it all. So I did that for about 2 weeks, and I was like, I'm really working 2 hours a day. Like, I'm really not doing much. So that tweaked it for me. I'm like, well, then if I can just bring it all back into 3 hours, 4 hours, and I'm not having a single break in those 3 hours, and I'm hang up, well, that's gold. Who wants to work harder and longer? Why don't you work harder and shorter?
Shorter, yeah.
How does that work with staff morale in your teams? Because when you've got limited time and you're working, non-stop, how do you go with the interaction with your team members and your staff? And, because you're going to be limited in how much time you can spend with them as well.
Yeah, of course. My team's brilliant. They know how we operate. And I suppose if my numbers didn't stack up, well, then there would be something missing. If you're talking about our broader team, we're so hands-on with training and bringing up the younger, newer staff members to show them the path rather than tell them the path. A lot of it is just, rather than talking, doing, if that makes sense. We're huge on training. Every single week, Tuesday morning, scripts and dialogues in our office, and that goes out to the entire group. So there's a lot of high touch, as much as we're not physically in the office all the time.
So your training from Bentleigh goes to the whole group?
Yep. It's zoomed out to everybody. People log in from all of our offices, and we run that every week.
I think the modern workplace, though, has changed significantly, particularly in a post-COVID environment. It's less about being in the office for 8 or 9 hours a day, and it's more about the productive hours that people are within the office. And now there's talks of, a 4-day work schedule or the hybrid work model. I think that implementing these models, if you've got the right people in your business, you're going to create a powerhouse, and you're going to have longevity in your business as well, particularly if you're leading by example. If you're not leading by example, it makes it a hell of a lot worse. But I want to know, Simon, how did you become a director? So you went from EA to then agent to then director. And I mean, it's Buxton Bentleigh is a high profile, very well regarded brand. Talk us through the change from agent to director and the change in your lifestyle between those two jumps as well.
Yeah, it's a good question. I made it very clear from day one that I wanted to be a business owner. I never wanted to be a salesperson.
Why did you want to be a business owner? Can I ask?
That's what Chris was. If you want to get further in this industry, for me, my experience, I'm like, I want to be an auctioneer. I need to make sure I'm a good auctioneer. I want to be a business owner. It's also, in a way, a passive income too. You're getting paid more for the hours that you're working. And in real estate, it's not 9 to 5. Even if I'm not in the office from 2 o'clock onwards, it's pretty uncommon that I won't be on the mobile or on the phone doing deals after hours.
Totally.
I've got a fantastic partner that, when a deal's there to be done, she knows. what was the change for me? To become a director, it's more than just a title. When I was a salesperson and I was young, hungry, bullish, maybe a little bit erring on the side of overconfident as a young person. And to become a director, it's not just the title and getting paid dividends. It's about being the director, directing people, helping them to grow, being an example for them. So for me, it was, how are you presented all the time? How are you talking to people? How are you lifting people up as opposed to dragging them down? Probably the best part for me was it stopped any of the salesperson niggles and nagging that happen when you're competing for listings. And it was more an overarching overview.
The bigger picture.
The bigger picture. Don't look at the $5 note in front of your face and look at the stack of cash that's a year down the road, and focusing on that, which is it's a very different role. When you're in sales, it's the hunt, it's the kill. But if you're a director and you're leading a team, it's about providing.
How do you transition though? Because you're a great lister. You're still one of the top agents in the state and the country. So how do you transition from?
Takes time.
Yeah,
Takes a lot of
being
time.
a great lister and seller and auctioneer, and still being a mentor for your team and providing that leadership for them as well, and
Takes
maybe
time.
sharing your commissions as well, or sharing your listings.
It takes a lot of time. For me, it just took growing up, really. It takes a long time to mature for men. It really does, especially when I got in at 20 years old. It's not an easy industry to break into and then have longevity in. So for me, it was more so about growing up, not shooting from the hip, not reacting straight away to things, which I'm notoriously bad for. But as I get older, it's like, take a breath, listen.
Yeah.
Is that because of
Respond.
the mentorship you've had?
For sure. And it's also just growing as a person, removing the things out of my life that didn't serve me to be better.
What did those things look like?
Booze,
Yeah. You don't drink at all?
rarely
Really?
anymore. 6 to 8 months ago, I just changed it. I'm like, when we found out we were pregnant, I just said, I just want to get in the best shape of my life before this baby comes.
Yeah.
And I did, lost 11 kilos.
Wow.
And I didn't have 11 to lose, but I lost
I
11
think you
kilos.
did.
And for me, it was like, I've just got to make sure that I'm implemented and regimented with everything that I do. If I'm not, and I have a bad night's sleep, or I drank on Saturday night and then Monday, Tuesday are a bit foggy, I just couldn't afford to do that anymore. So
It's such a common theme, Simon, with the high caliber of directors and agents that we meet with is the alcohol and it's the lifestyle. And it's the more people we sit down with on this show, the more paramount it is that your lifestyle outside of work will affect how successful you are.
Yep.
Because the drinking on the weekend, you first you become an agent, then you
Yep.
start making all this money.
Yep.
What do you do with all this money when you're in your early 20s? Party, go crazy. And then you hit a wall when you realize I actually can't maintain this anymore. And now I need to implement something into my life that's going to give me balance and enjoyment. And then a lot of people go down this path of health and fitness. It's such a common theme with people that we interview. But with you, Simon, it really sounds like from the very beginning, you've always had a big long-term plan.
Yep.
You know, you saw Craig, you wanted to, not Craig, Chris, you wanted to be like him, you emulated him, you wanted to be a director. So was it really Chris that was inspiring to you, or did you always want more from your life?
it wasn't just Chris. I'm an avid listener to podcasts and just being better in general. You know, I'll listen to everything from spirituality stuff to people doing ayahuasca trips in the jungle to everything. So I'm big on just feeding my mind to have that right
Still
mindset,
hungry.
if that makes sense. Yeah, to stay hungry. I remember when I started, there was a few guys that started around the same time with me at competing agencies, and it was like direct competition, and that drove me at the time. Now what drives me is there's me 10 years ago, 15 years ago that are hunting me like I hunted my competitors. So that drives me more than ever because, you know, when you start to build success, a lot of people become complacent. For me, I'm still building my career 15 years in. I'm a third of the way through where I really want to be. So
Where do you want to be?
I'd love to not work Saturdays anymore.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck. Where do I want to be?
Auctioneer as well.
Well, now being a dad as well, right?
Yeah.
The balance would be you want to watch your
Totally
beautiful daughter
changed.
grow up. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's more so work, as bad as this sounds, is now secondary for me. It's still secondary by a smidgen, but family is the most important thing to me. I don't want to be one of those agents that's divorced 3 times, has kids with 3 or 4 different women. That's just not how I want to be. I've got an amazing partner with a beautiful little daughter. And
It's absolutely beautiful,
she's
might I add.
gorgeous, gorgeous. All I want to do is,
And supported by the sounds of it. Like,
Yeah.
it's hard to do. It's
not easy to date a real estate agent.
if you don't have.
We're not
a
easy
supportive
people to
partner.
date, especially because we're so high focused and high stress. And a lot of us do bring that stress home. For me, it was about leaving work at the door now more than ever, but it's hard to do. You know, we're all human
You
beings.
get a call at night, gotta answer it, don't you?
Or waiting on deals, you know, the amount of times I'm sitting on the couch, I'm like, I wish this buyer would fucking sign this contract. And they just don't, you know. It's just about that balance.
Totally.
That's the thing.
And obviously, like Chris is getting a lot of mentioning here, you really looked up to Chris. Now you've got junior or younger people looking up to you.
Yep.
What's your approach with the younger agents that are entering the industry? What kind of mentor or support are you to them, or what do you want to be to them?
It's changed over the years. Being a good agent doesn't mean you're a good mentor.
I'm
I
a
learned
good
that.
business owner.
I learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
I've been through a number of PAs, some of which have left the industry, some of which have now gone on to be directors at other Buxton offices, which is amazing. Do as I do, not as I say, is one of the big ones, because a lot of people talk, and coming from a place of I'm not the expert. Yeah, I'm good at what I do, but I'm still learning. I'm still learning every day.
We all are.
Yeah, there's situations that I handle incorrectly, and it's about learning from those things, and that's something that I try and impart with the younger guys coming through. It's like, look, we can give you all of the tools, but that doesn't mean you're going to be perfect.
Yeah.
You're going to make mistakes along the way, but the best people learn from those mistakes really quickly and move forward. Try not to make the same mistakes more than once.
Do you try to teach balance to them?
Yeah, it's when I started, the balance was a lot harder, a lot harder. It's probably why my routine's structured the way that it is now outside of work, getting up a lot earlier and doing the things that I need to do before I even go into the office. Balance is hard to find when you're starting. It is.
I think to some extent as well, Simon, and we were having a bit of a talk about this before we started filming, the younger agents coming in now, that younger generation, the work ethic is very different.
Yes.
You mentioned you first started at Buxton and you were given a phone and off you go. And the same for me with recruitment. You know, I remember my first days in recruitment. Here's a phone. Here's a list of people that you can potentially. I wasn't even a list. It was like, just go.
Yeah.
And you made something out of nothing. And I'm sure your early legal days, you didn't have a mentor. Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not you,
Made
Rexy.
a big difference.
Huge difference.
But when you start and you're given nothing, to then you've got to make something out of nothing, and you've really got to go through that grind and that hardship. And my early days in sales were 12, 13-hour days and just working to the bone to get to where I am.
Yeah.
The younger ones coming in now, they see this and they want it, but they don't want to go through all of this to get there.
Yeah.
And it's a very fine line between not wanting to burn out the juniors coming in, but also making them realize you've got to go through some really hard and shitty times.
Of course.
And the real dark grind to get to the sunny sunshine where you can have this ultimate balance.
Yeah.
So I think it's hard to teach it, right? To juniors coming in.
I think social media plays a big part in that. When we were younger, it wasn't as there wasn't as much social media.
No.
Now look at social media, everything's rosy.
Did you even have internet when you were
Probably not. They're the old keyboards. But when you look at what everyone just sees in social media, stats are most young kids want to be influencers. They don't want to work.
Yeah.
It's different.
Well, even watching your social media, Simon, like you inspire me. I'm like here I am making phone calls and he's doing an ice bath, but then I know that what you have structured into your day allows you to have this ultimate balance. And that's what everyone wants.
Yep.
The conversations I have day in, day out with agents, I want balance.
Yep.
But can you talk about as well, like how has Buxton helped your career? Because 15 years with one brand, it's very uncommon.
It's a great brand.
Fantastic brand.
One of the oldest brands in Victoria, and that helps a lot. Great mentors, but that balance word, for me, especially with Hannah, day one, I'm like, I want you to see the world. So I want you to book at least one overseas holiday a year. That will fill your cup, but it'll also give you a lot of things to talk to people about. The amount of times I walk through a house and there's a photo of Petra and Jordan, I'm like, how good's that? I've been there before. Or Santorini in Greece or Egypt. All these places that I've been, it just comes from being able to have the opportunity. Craig, my other business partner, he is huge on travel. So it was one thing that he instilled into me. He's like, mate, you need to go overseas every year. A, to fill your cup, but B, it's just going to give you life experience, especially as a young person. So I have minimum sort of 2 interstate holidays a year, 1 overseas. This year will be different with the baby, but
Yes.
having that time away and knowing in advance that it's booked is so handy, because it means you can go hard because you've got something to look forward to. Buxton are huge on that balance side of it, because we don't want to have agents that come in for 2 or 3 years and then burn out and then leave, because it happens all the time. And it is a labour intensive job. You know, you're the real estate agent, you're the marriage counsellor, you know, you're all of these things to a lot of different people, and your work doesn't stop when you walk in the front door, as you know.
The Buxton brand, though, has a way of attracting some really killer agents. My experience recruiting for Buxton since the very beginning has always been that they attract but also retain and have an eye for really high-performing, well-presented, articulate, business-minded agents.
Yep.
Probably more so than any other brand that I've had the pleasure of recruiting for. Buxton just has that really strong premium brand name on the market that attracts so many good people to it. But again, 15 years with one brand is such a long time, particularly in an industry that people jump and change all the time. There's always the grass is greener on this side. But it sounds like with the mentors that you've had and the structure from Buxton, the grass was never greener anywhere else for you. It was purely just watering the patch that you had.
The grass is green where you water it.
Yeah.
A lot of people make the mistake. I always knew from early on that if I'm going to be with a brand, that I kind of want to stay with that brand forever. I've seen people that jump from one agency to another, to another, and to another. And yeah, they might have some success, but if I was employing an agent and they had longevity with one brand, it shows that they're committed.
Correct.
That they don't just jump ship at the first sign of hardship.
It's about opportunities as well. I think Buxton as a brand promotes young people.
Yes.
It's probably got the most amount of young.
Yes.
Well, they've got the Rising Stars heading to, is it Rising Stars that are going to Japan?
Yep.
Or is it the
Elite?
The Elite.
The elite, but they've also make junior partners.
Yes.
Every year they've got, you know, the younger people under their 30s or in their 20s become partners at Buxton.
Our office was the first company to do that. And now I see our competitors doing it. You know, we were in the Elite Agent magazine when we all bought in, because we were the youngest directors. Almost any real estate agency.
Yeah,
almost any real estate agency. Like, nobody puts those sorts of people in positions, but, you know, I was 7 or 8 years in at that point.
But you're still in your 20s.
At the time, I was,
So, you know, not many other brands promote people in their 20s to become partners. And I think that's what you spoke about, retention. I think that's what Buxton does great. They recognize talent, and they kind of...
They've got phenomenal business owners within their network as well. Some of the best business owners.
For sure.
That real business mindset. It's not so much... I'm going to be candid. I deal with so many slimy real estate directors that are just that old school, and you're just like...
Yeah, diamond in the tooth, 1990s real estate.
Yeah. But the Buxton directors are really sharp, smooth, business-minded. You know, you cannot pull the wool over their eyes. And it comes down to, obviously, the support they get from corporate, but the way that they recruit business owners and retain them is probably one of the strongest in terms of the brands that I can see across the Victorian market.
Yeah. Well... We employ and give opportunity to good people, not to good agents.
Yeah.
Good agents can come and go, but good people are hard to find. So for us, and that's across our entire group, we've recently let go of an office because they weren't the right fit for us, and they were a really high-performing office. But if you're not the right person with the right values and the right way you go about doing business, and you don't reflect our brand the way that we want to be reflected in the marketplace, well, then there's no place for you.
Yeah.
So it's always people and then business, and that's how we've always operated.
Quality over quantity as well. I've always found that with the Buxton brand. Awesome. Any parting words, Simon? Where are we going to see you in 5 years? 4 children, apparently.
4 children.
I hope your partner also knows about this.
Beth, 4? No, we got the first one. Where do I see myself in 5 years? Happily married, couple of kids, still continuing my work-life balance, and being a better human than I am today.
It's going to be hard to do that.
That's it. You can always be better.
I want to see you do some high rocks competitions or some men's bodybuilding modelling.
I don't know about any of that.
We've got to get a block of cheese to grate on those abs.
I'm just training for longevity in life. You know?
Love it.
That's all it is.
Simon, thank you so much. You're a absolute breath of fresh air in this industry, and I think the way you've managed your career from start to finish and the balance that you have is just so inspiring for younger agents coming through. You're awesome. Thank you so much for being a part.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you. We'll see you on the next episode of Real Estate Renovators.